Welcome to the new sound of online radio. Welcome to the sound of Universal Broadcasting Network. 'Cause you make me feel like I've been locked out of heaven. A mix of today's hits and hard-to-find favorites, combined with the most entertaining and intriguing talk anywhere. This is your sound. This is the sound of Universal Broadcasting Network at ubnradio.com.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. You have joined Distill It, a 360-degree view of life in sports. We are here on a Tuesday afternoon with my accomplished and wonderful partner, myself, Wendy Rosenthal, and Ira Schwitzer. Welcome. Hello.
Hi.
And for those of you who are regular watchers, I'm going to immediately jump in with, look, Ira has a new haircut.
The biggest news in sports this week.
It is the biggest news in sports this week, which is why we wanted to talk about it. How are you doing?
Fabulous. You?
I'm great. I hope everybody enjoyed your Labor Day weekend. For those of us who are in the U.S., I know we have a lot of friends and fans overseas. Sorry you missed out on a 3-day weekend. We are here every other Tuesday at the fantastic Universal Broadcasting Network, ubnradio.com. We are also live streaming on Facebook. And we are very excited to be here today because our guest is somebody who is really aligned with what Ira and I do at the distillery. And I'll take a moment now just to share that a little bit of what we do. And that's to work with athletes that are transitioning from their careers in sports to a life beyond sports. And we're very passionate about it. And that's one of the reasons why we do this show every couple of weeks, because we really believe that sports is a metaphor for life. And when you play it, think about it, and live it well, then your life is better, right?
That's what we think.
That's exactly what we think. I'm going to introduce our guest in a minute, but he is a leader in this industry, and we are very fortunate to have him here. If you are interested in giving us a call and asking him some questions or us some questions, you can do so at 323-284-7826. Or you can Skype at UBN Skype Guest 1. Before we bring on our esteemed guests, as always, we like to talk a little bit about what was going on in the world of sports in the last couple of weeks. Actually, it was the last week because we did a show last week.
We did.
What happened last
Go
week?
Trojans.
Go
Trojans.
College football started.
It is back.
It is back. We are so excited.
How happy making is that?
It was
a fun weekend.
Unbelievable. Yeah. A lot of very interesting games. I thought that the fact that Appalachian State almost upset Penn State was pretty interesting to watch. We are of course, very happy about our alma mater, USC, and the Trojans. They had a great game. Another interesting game, actually, I want to talk about it because we brought this up, was the University of Texas, who are also friends of ours. We won't say Ira is a fan because she's not, but we have a lot of UT friends and family and fans.
And colleagues.
And their game with the University of Maryland was not great from the perspective of being a UT fan, but it was really interesting because Maryland has been going through such a traumatic time right now with the death of one of their players from heat stroke and the administration having to remove their coach and some of their head coach and some of their other coaching staff. It's been a big controversy, and the team paid honor and tribute to their fallen friend. But what was interesting for me is I heard a lot of chitter chat about, this is either going to be good for UT or not so good for UT in terms of how the game would come out, and they were expected to win. And in the conversations after with a lot of the athletes and the coach, the interim coach, they were on a mission. They were going to win this game come hell or high water, which there was a lot of high water. I don't know if you saw the game, but it was like a 3-hour time rain delay. The skies opened up, and it was kind of one of those things where, I don't think UT could have overcome the groundswell of emotion that was going to carry that team.
Yeah, absolutely. And it touches a lot too. I mean, it goes to, we can do that mindset, that emotional, commitment to something can carry us through something like that. It's
well, it can bury you or it can carry you.
It can bury you or can carry you. Absolutely. And we've seen it go either way.
Yeah, and that's what was so interesting about this game is that, they weren't going to let it bury them.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
As much as I hate to say it, congrats to the University of Maryland. And we really hope that it gets sorted out because heat stroke is something that's so avoidable. And that that there shouldn't be an athlete on the planet that even comes close to being ill from that.
Right.
As far as we're concerned.
Yeah,
so
very
we hope,
preventable.
Yeah, and we hope that the NC2A will do what they're supposed to do and make it a little bit more strict.
Yeah.
Last thoughts on the week in sports.
You're all in blue.
I'm all in blue.
What else is going on this weekend?
Go Dodgers! We're coming down to the end of the season. I think we're 4 weeks away from the playoffs, and
they're looking good.
For all of those of you who are not in Los Angeles, including our guest, sorry, it's very Los Angeles focused this week. And the U.S. Open has started, and it's been a very interesting tournament. But not nearly as important as the Dodgers winning, right?
Yeah, exactly. Certainly for Angelina.
Yeah, for sure.
And you care.
All right. We want to get straight to our guest because we have so much to talk to him about. As we mentioned, he is a leader in the field of personal development and focusing particularly on athletes, how athletic identity really plays a role in how they do not only when they are playing on the field, but for sure their life beyond sports and also off the field as well. He is an author of a couple of books on the topic. He is a counselor. He is also the founder of an incredible organization called the Institute for Personal Player Development. We want to welcome Dr. Mark Robinson. Thank you so much, Mark, for joining us.
I was enjoying the conversation.
Oh, well, we thought to ask you any fun sports activity this week that caught your interest. You want to share?
No, I just watch. I watch sport as a sport. So I watch everything that's on, from darts to billiards to bowling.
Darts. Oh, that's right. You lived in the UK for a while. I can imagine you would have picked that up there.
There's always something. There's always that competition. I think 2 weeks ago we watched. They called it, what was it, corn sack or potato sack tossing?
Oh yeah, the thing where you throw the beanbag into the holes.
Yeah,
right.
And I didn't know that was a professional sport. It was on television.
That and curling. You got to wonder why.
So you look at those
audience.
things and you think, just about anyone could be an athlete at this point because everything's a sport.
And there's an audience for anything.
Aaron.
There it is.
Yeah.
That's it.
Aaron and I have a theory that as long as you can move and you want to move, you can be an athlete.
Exactly.
So we pay tribute to those people who are
moving.
Thank you so much for being with us today. We are really honored to have you, and we want to kick off the conversation a little bit with, your books and a lot of what you talk about have to do with athletic identity. Can you tell us a little bit about what you mean when you say athletic identity and how that impacts any kind of athlete?
Well, I think from a definition standpoint, it's really being able to be in a position to take advantage of the opportunities that are presented to you as an athlete. I think there are a number of opportunities that present themselves to folks that play sports, particularly in college and obviously at the professional level, that we kind of take for granted as athletes. And then once that career is over, we look back and say, wow, things are pretty different now that I'm no longer an athlete with that title. And I would say that athletic identity starts for a lot of people at 8, 9 years of age, maybe even 7 for some, because once they find themselves getting that gratification from sports, they don't really want to focus on anything else because that's what's giving them that self-gratification day in and day out. And so they never really look at anything else. So I always tell people, as soon as the moment your child realizes that, hey, this is what I want to do and I love it, is the time you need to really start worrying about, okay, how can I get them to love something else to the same magnitude that they love sports?
It's so interesting that you say that. In some of the work we've done with athletes, one of the biggest comments that has come back is, after they get off, when they're on the field, whether they're the crowd of 90,000 in a football stadium or a baseball stadium or whatever the circumstances are where they're the focus, even if they are on a team and they aren't individually being cheered for, that, you know, that rush, that adrenaline, that way of nurturing who they are and how they see themselves in the world is so powerful that it's very hard when you walk off the field for the last time to not live with that. And I think what you were just saying early, to have your child early on recognize that those accolades can come from different places is really important. Do you find that that's one of the hardest things to help an athlete transition away from, is that kind of instantaneous gratification, accolation, adulation,
Sure.
even the accolades and the adulation?
I think it's difficult because as a parent or a teacher or a coach, you don't really know who that young person is. If you look at obviously we'll get into, I guess, the mental health component of being an athlete, but if you look at when it first starts, there are a lot of other activities that kids are afforded to. So I think my middle son was probably, 12? He's probably 7 or 8. And he had scored, I don't know, maybe 15 or 17 points in a game. And he had a good game. And after the game, we got into the car. And I noticed a lot of people that were in this particular basketball lobby were, good game, good game, good game. And he got in the car and he said, Dad, I feel, after that game, I feel like a superstar. And I said, why? And he said, because everyone's telling me, good game, and I started to think to myself, okay, here we go. This is the feeling that you get at this young age. And it was like, oh, I want to go to the gym. I want to practice. I want to shoot. And some parents can take that the wrong way and think, okay, yeah, I'm going to get you in there. You're going to be the next Michael Jordan. Well, that's not going to happen. But I think for me, and I would give this advice to parents, is let the kids be a kid.
Right.
If your kid is into video games and sports, let them say, hey, you know what? Go home and play video games. If they like going swimming, hey, go swimming. But I think when we consume them with the sport and they've already accepted that that's who they want to become, there's almost no turning back until failure is upon us.
Well, I have a question to ask then, because you read a lot about kids growing up in sports and their coaches pushing them to excel, to spend a lot of time practicing and being fit and over and over and over, the repetitions and all of that. And I hear what you're saying, and I agree with you, but also you hear other athletes saying, I had to do this in order to get to an elite status,
Sure.
in order to make it to the pros. They couldn't really do a lot of other things besides
Whether it was
it.
specializing in one sport or playing multiple sports, the focus was always still on excelling as an athlete.
Exactly. So how do you create that balance if you see it? I understand it when your kid is maybe 6 or 7 years old. How do you do it when they start to really show promise in whatever sport they're playing?
Well, I only go by, really example of what I've done with my boys and the teams that I've coached at the youth level, and then obviously working out kids at the high school level. I think that there has to be a balance in terms of what actually they're getting. If you're just going to play a bunch of games, that's not really going to be it, because obviously from the research, injuries and burnout and all the other things that come with it, I think there has to be a balance of the fundamental development. And obviously, when you get older, it transcends from fundamental development to skill development. It doesn't really matter what sport we're talking about, because there's a certain development of skills that need to be acquired to play at the top level. So when you look at, for example, some of these European academies for basketball and football or soccer, whatever continent you're on, whatever you want to call it, there's a lot of fundamental and skill development that go on throughout the year, which is great. And there's a balance to that. It's not, let's just work on skills all the time. Let's play games all the time, but there's a balance to it. So maybe there's an off season where there's purely skill development. And I think our college system does an excellent job of, maintaining the certain amount of hours, because when I played, hell, you could be in the gym for 5 hours and there were no rules.
Sure.
Right.
So now they've got 20 hours here, 8 hours here, where you have to fit all that in a small space, but also you got to go to class and you got to have a social life.
Yeah.
So when, I heard you guys talking about the football games over the weekend, and although we enjoy it, they still got to go to class, on Tuesday and tomorrow. So I think that there has to be a balance of the skills and the fundamental development, as well as the games that they play.
Yeah, it's so interesting because we've done a lot of conversations with universities about how to take the types of things that for sure you are bringing to the table and how you're teaching athletes and some of the work that we do. And one of the big comments back from many administrations, not just one or two, is, yeah, they just don't have time anymore for this type of thing because of the fact that there's limited number of hours they can practice, there's the game, there's school, and so it's very interesting. Like on the one hand, it's good that they have more time, and yet they don't seem to have time for some of the things that are really important about, like helping athletes transition out of their college careers. That's it. Ava, correct me if I'm wrong, but I really feel like that's one of our biggest pains when we think about helping athletes is that the university system is actually quite tough to penetrate in terms of giving these kids the kind of things that you're giving them in your seminars and with the work that you're doing on a regular, consistent basis.
Sure.
Can I just tell you something about
Please.
what you just said?
Please.
It's I mean, I don't want to hurt your show being too direct, but that's just not true.
Oh, no, we want to hear it.
It's what they tell you,
Right.
because the people most likely that are in place to put those programs and establish them are usually either misinformed of what actually it takes, or they just don't care. It's either one or the other.
Yeah.
To say that we don't have enough time to help this athlete is just someone showing their true colors of either being misinformed or not having the skill set. If you look at most of the folks that deal with the life skills area on these college campuses, that the lifespan of that position has the highest turnover in an athletic department, because that's usually an entry level position that is not paid on the same par as the other positions in athletics. So you'll find a lot of folks that come out of graduate school, they'll do an internship, boom, they'll go into life skills. And they'll stay in life skills for a year or two, then bounce off to another college, then bounce off to another college. You can never establish a long track record if you're constantly moving from one college to another, because of obviously the salary that's in place, the prestige of the institution that you're at, and the opportunity to move up the athletic ladder within athletics. You'll find that even some of these people, and I'm not calling anyone out, but it's just the fact that if you look at their background and their degrees and what they've majored in at graduate level and all these other places, you'll find that their academic requirements for a particular job doesn't match the duties that the job requires. Mm-hmm. So you'll find that they'll say, we don't have time for that. Athletes don't have time for that. And they're in a tough position. Don't get me wrong. They are in a tough position because you've got to deal with head coaches. A lot of the head coaches have egos. They don't want their players doing X, Y, and Z.
Sure.
It's such a system that is not geared to really helping the athlete. They will help you transition in. They will give you all of the things that you need when you come from high school or junior college, or you're a transfer from someplace else. They'll make sure you have no worries and no concerns. So if you can make sure that the athlete transitions in, I know you can make sure that the athlete transitions out. Not everyone's going to go to the NFL or the NBA, or
most of them aren't, and that's
right.
That's.
Well, I don't like to say most of them, because some people think, well, not my kid. My kid's going.
But the numbers don't lie. The statistics are very, very clear.
Yeah, you could tell people the statistics all day long, and they'll keep telling you, well, my kid's special. My kid's different. And I just tell every athlete that I work with, I just tell them, hey, you know what? If anyone can go pro, why not you?
Sure.
But let's work on something else in the meantime, before you become a pro. Yeah. Let's work on something so that you have it done when you finish being a pro, because you're not going to be a pro forever. So let's just work on these things as like an exercise.
Right.
We love you.
Fun. Let's have fun.
Fun, right? And see how it goes. But I'll tell you that, people, if you pick up the phone and you call, I'm going to say 25 different colleges right now, and you ask them, hey, I want to come in and talk to your athletes about transition. Oh, no, we have someone coming. And you'll look and see who they have coming. And then you look at that person's bio on LinkedIn, and then you think, okay, but you're having this person come in and talk to your athletes about transition. I believe if you go and speak at a college and you're not prepared to give every single one of those student athletes your cell phone number and say, call me if you need something, then you're just in it for the money.
Yeah.
You're just in it for the money.
By the way, you didn't say anything controversial there.
No.
Really, I was hoping for controversy, and we couldn't be more on the same page with you.
It's so true.
Good.
It's so true, and I think to your point that when people are telling us time, look, for sure, the universities aren't making the time that's needed, and this is one of the things that we have found along the way. And it isn't that the athlete doesn't necessarily have time. It's like you're saying, there's so many barriers, there's coaches, there's so many other things pulling at an athlete, and it's I think one of the most tragic parts of our great university systems that do so much for athletes. By the way, I give them a lot of credit.
Yeah.
A lot of athletes wouldn't have the opportunities that they have if there wasn't a collegiate system that they could go into and have all of those other things. But yeah, there's certainly a lot of room for improvement on that front.
Yeah.
When we were speaking the other day before the show, you made a comment that both Era and I, our ears perked up, and we loved it. Yeah, we really loved it, and we wanted to ask you about it. You said as an athlete never really knows who they are until after they are no longer an athlete, or something to that effect. Can you talk to us about that? Because I think that in a lot of ways, a lot of people don't always know who they are until maybe they've gone through a career or life cycle, or they get older or whatever. But I think that it's even more impactful when you're talking about athletes.
Yeah, I think that when we as athletes, when we go through a career, particularly and I don't like to differentiate between high major, mid major, low major, power fives and all that, because I think we all go through a similar journey, but I think it's a little bit more, I guess I should say, detrimental to our overall development if you're like in a Power Five conference, because you're catered to so much and so well, as you said, that you are catered to. But I think that you don't have an identity. You don't have any idea who you are. It's not as if you can. I equate it to Iron Man. I ask the kids all the time, who is Iron Man? And everyone will say Tony Stark. Right. So Iron Man is Tony Stark and Tony Stark is Iron Man. But for athletes, you don't get a chance to take off that suit along your journey and figure out who you are. But once that's done, you have to figure out who you are. And I will say this about sports, and it depends on obviously who your coach is and who your parents are and how you've been developed and influenced over the years. But I will say that when you finish playing a sport and you don't know who you are, that skill set, the leadership, the mental toughness, the parental guidance, all of those things come into play that really make the difference between the athlete that goes north and the athlete that goes south. Yeah. We find that a lot of folks in the track and field arena kind of have it switched on a little bit. They have it switched on because they go in knowing, hey, this is my time, this is my jump, and this is the top jump in order for me to go to the next level, and I'm just not going to be there. So let me focus on this thing now early enough so I can finish up my education and go on and live my life. I think when you're looking at football and basketball, those are the sports where, as you said earlier, you could be the 12th man on a basketball team or, the 43rd guy on a football team, and you think that you're hot stuff and you still got a chance. So I say that we don't know who we are until we lose our identity. And then we have to go through this process as a 23, 24-year-old person, finding out who we are. And some of us, it's difficult. It's difficult. And some of us don't even know they need help because of losing identity.
Well, I think one of the things also we've seen a lot of is that there's an expectation about when you're an athlete at a certain, let's say, elite level, there's an expectation about who you're supposed to be anyway. Does that make sense? Like, whether I'm going to use probably the worst terms ever, but like, I've got to be macho. I can't show any cracks. I've got to be tough. I've got to be, I have to be so many different things in order for people to really believe who I am. Is it true that it's hard to even build your own identity beyond playing because there's a lot of preconceived notions about who you should be anyway?
Yeah, I don't doubt that the preconceived notions, they start at a young age. When your parents say, hey, that's my basketball player, or that's my football player, or, that pressure right there, it goes the distance, because you constantly are thinking that you're playing the sport for someone else. The athletes that play the sport for themselves their entire time are, in my opinion, gifted. They're gifted in the sense that they don't care about what anyone else says. And nowadays with social media, it's so hard not to fall into when someone sets a tweet out about you and says you're the best thing since sliced bread, but you're coming from some small town that no one's even heard of. But yeah, you may be the best in that small town, but there's a whole world out there that you're going to have to compete against. So I think when we look at the identity component to who we are, and I ask the students, who are you, what are you good at, and what do you want to become? Those are the three major questions that I'll ask any person if they call and say, hey, I'm having a hard time, or my son or my daughter. And I'll say, let me talk to them. And I'll say, who are you? What are you good at, and what do you want to become?
Right.
And if those three little questions, you find that athletes have a hard time understanding. You can ask a room full of athletes. You're only going to get a handful that know the answer to all of those questions. And the crazy thing is, it's about you.
Right.
It's about you. If I ask someone, what type of ice cream do you prefer, chocolate or vanilla? They're going to give me a preference. What's your favorite food? They're going to be able to spit that out. What's your favorite shoe brand? Nike, Adidas, Under Armour. What do you like? Right? They're going to tell you. What do you like? Blondes or brunettes? They're going to tell you that. But you ask them some questions that are personal to their development. A lot of them don't have a clue.
So where do you start?
With those three questions.
After that, after you get the non-answer,
right. You get the non-answer. You say, so who are you? Right? You say, who are you? And then you'll find that folks will say, I'm a football player. Okay, we can stay with that. What are you good at? I'm good at scoring touchdowns. What do you want to become? I want to become an NFL player. Great. I think that's wonderful. Now let's play the game. Let's play the game as if you don't play sports. Now answer the question.
Yeah.
And that's where people like you and people like me, that's where the work comes in.
Right.
That's where the work comes in, because now you know that person has no other identity other than sports. Someone says, who are you? You say, well, I'm a brother. I'm a father. I'm an uncle. I'm a Christian. I'm a person who enjoys life to the fullest. Okay, well, that's something to start. What are you good at? I'm good at helping people. I'm good at figuring things out. I'm good at working with my hands. I'm good at networking. I'm good at social media. What do you want to become? Now we can look at those first two and try to combine that to determine what you really want to become. And obviously you're looking at someone who's probably in college, and they're going to major in something that is closely aligned to that. Or you may be dealing with a professional athlete who maybe have not expanded their network as they probably should have. We find a lot of professional athletes have a vast network, and they don't expand on it while they're hot.
Sure.
While you have that logo on your arm, on your chest, on your helmet, on your socks, that's the best time to build a network to help you when you finish. But most often we shy away from those folks who could probably help us later on down the road.
Right.
And isn't that true also of college athletes? Like, one of the things that they have an advantage of is they are in college right then, and there's a lot of push to help students network, to get them out. Do you find that college students don't know how to network at all either, and our college athletes are kind of stuck in that, I don't know what to do with this opportunity that's presented itself right now by being on campus, by having tools like career development offices or alumni associations? Do you see that it's hard for them?
Oh, hard. It is extremely hard. And listen, the reason why it's extremely hard is because before we go to the networking event, we've got to teach these folks how to network.
Yeah.
We've got to teach
Yeah.
them what to say and what they're looking for, because most often you'll go to say, well, what's your major? Oh, I'm undecided. But you're going to go to a networking event. Yeah,
Right.
well, I'm just going to go and see what's going on. And then you have no idea what you're looking for. And a lot of people confuse networking events with job fairs. Okay, the job fair is not a networking event. Okay, you're not trying to build a network at a job fair. You're trying to get a job, right? So when we look at a networking event, it's people that are looking in the future, people that want to connect with you on a different level.
Sure.
Not so much that we want to hire you. Maybe we want to work with you. Because if I go to a networking event, I'm not really looking for someone to work for me, or I'm not looking to work for someone. I'm looking to figure out how I can work with you, how we can build something, collaborate on something together. If you're in a particular field and I know someone else in the field that I can connect you guys with, then they're great. That's networking.
Yeah.
So I think when we're looking at the college athlete, we're not teaching the college athlete how to network and the benefits of networking. You figure you go to college and you're on a $50,000 or $14,000 or $16,000 scholarship a year, and we should have a networking workshop to show you what you need to be looking for.
I'm curious because I know that you do so much work internationally. Is this a dynamic that's unique, or more so unique to U.S. athletes, or is this something that you see happening around the world? Athletes, A, struggling with their athletic identity, and B, like you said, not leveraging that platform that they have while they have it.
It's interesting because from a European standpoint, they keep everything in-house. Mm-hmm. As much as they can, from 13, 14, 15, 16. If you look at, for example, Real Madrid, they have football and they have basketball.
Sure.
And they come all the way through. They don't bounce from AAU to high school, from high school to college to wherever they go after that.
Right.
They keep it all intact, and they have a very precise education component. If you want to go into coaching and officiating, you start that early. But from a personal player development standpoint, particularly in Great Britain right now, they have what you call safeguarding or welfare officers. And that's really for the protection of the child, but it's not on the same level. So in a lot of aspects, they're ahead of us from a structural standpoint, but from a personal development standpoint, they're about at the same level that we're at. We're trying to struggle. And in this field, honestly, it's still in its infancy stage. Every day I see someone else on LinkedIn pop out and say they're an expert in this and an expert in that. And I say, hey, hats off to you. If you can help one person, more power to you.
Absolutely. Agreed.
I was wanting to know, you mentioned, the pro athlete, and you've worked with both. What do you see as being the main difference between working with somebody who is now coming out of a pro athlete a career versus that college athlete that, besides the obvious, maybe one's getting paid a whole lot of money, but I mean, psychologically, where are they at different in a different way?
Oh, wow. That's a good question.
I asked a good question. I'm teasing.
It really is a good question because, this generation of athletes is different. And obviously along the same lines as the professional athlete, they both are very in tune to the realities of the sport. I think that the college athlete is a little more naive to the opportunity of playing professionally, where the professional athlete is in tune to understanding that the career is going to come to an end, and I do need to focus on this, but maybe I'll do it tomorrow. So you have the college athlete that's not really interested in it, but understands it, because there's nothing that's consistently put in their face. The professional athlete, especially now when you're looking at the player unions and all the stuff that they're doing at the professional level to kind of wake these guys up, I think that they're more willing, but then there's the difficulty of their particular gatekeepers. that the people that are around them. And I always tell folks that, that I work with, hey, if they could help you, then why are you talking to me? I'm not begging you. I'm not going to beg you so I can help you. If you have a good circle around you and you're confident that they're going to, look at your best interest from a personal development standpoint, then go for it.
Sure.
But the question is, why are we talking? And you'll find that even at the high school level, you have the gatekeepers and folks that'll say, hey, don't talk to them about anything but sport. And most of these people have never played at the next level. So they don't really understand that you can do both. And it's for me, I got my doctorate while I was playing professional basketball in England. And people would ask me, well, how did you get your doctorate while you're playing pro ball? And I said, well, considering that practice was an hour and a half in the day,
right?
What was I going to do the rest of the day?
Sure.
You can go to the mall, you can go to the city center, you can go to the pub, you can go fish and chips. But really, after that, you can do that for a week and a half, and it's great. And then after that, it's like, oh, I don't feel like doing that. Well, then where are you going to meet people? And I knew that I wanted to further my education. I knew I was going to meet people on campus. It was an environment that I was comfortable in as a player in college and studying. So for me, it was a no-brainer. And I tell folks that play overseas all the time, if you go overseas and you don't get a degree coming out of it, you're crazy.
I mean, you say that, and yet so many people don't.
The vast majority don't.
And I find it so interesting. And unfortunately, on all levels, we still are seeing so many stories of athletes who are coming out of their careers, whatever level it is, depressed, running out of money, trusting the wrong people. You talked a lot about the gatekeepers along the way. At every level, how do you, I don't want to say infiltrate the gatekeepers, because I feel like with Aira and I and what we're doing, the same gatekeepers exist, and we always talk about how it's not like we want to get them out of the way. We want to make them a part of the process because they're there for a reason. But can you talk a little bit more about the gatekeepers and how they might be helping their friends, family, sons, daughters, players that they're managing see the bigger picture? Do you have those conversations?
I have those conversations with the individual, because that's the only person that you could really talk to, unless you're talking to a kid's mom. Yeah. And some people that will come to me, I don't try to, go out and solicit these folks. If a parent or a girlfriend or a fiance emails and texts or, says, hey, can you help this person? Can you just have a conversation? And then I'll have a conversation. I don't mind having a conversation with anybody who's going through the transition. But what I find is the people don't like who you become. Your gatekeepers, they don't like who you become, meaning your true identity, because then it's like an awakening. Right. It's like now you're fully awake. When you were the athlete, everyone loves you. But as soon as you start to ask questions and, kind of prioritize and departmentalize your relationships, people, they like to say, oh, you've changed. When you become a pro, people, oh, he changed. No, he didn't change. Everyone around him changed. He didn't have any money before, so he wasn't picking up the tab. So now that he has money, you expect him to pick up the tab. Right. It doesn't work like that. Yeah. So I think when it comes to the gatekeepers, I think you cannot, it's very difficult to infiltrate them, and you have to go to the source. And it's easier to go to the source now because of social media. You can, tweet something and tag whoever you're intending it to be. I mean, I've tweeted some things and did things on LinkedIn, and the person contacts me and say, hey, you said this about me. Yes, I said that. How can you help me? Oh, okay. You want me to help you? No problem. But I think for someone, for folks like yourself, you're infiltrating everyone right now. Yeah. You could call and interview the athletic director for whatever school you want, or you could try to. Whether they come or not, that's another story.
We have actually,
right?
And we've had them on.
And you ask them a number of questions, and then what I used to do when I used to do a magazine, and I kind of pulled back on it now, and I used to interview these people and I'd write down all the things that they basically didn't say. And then I would call someone in the department and say, hey, I was having a conversation with so-and-so. You want me to come to campus and talk about blah, blah, blah. I know you don't have that. I know you're not offering that.
Yeah.
Now you got them.
Right.
You know, now it's just a matter of them telling you, no, I don't want you coming to campus. I don't like you. Okay, great. You know, but at least,
and we've been told that too. We don't have a problem with that. Not everybody likes us. It's okay.
You respect them even more.
Exactly.
So I think that's the best way with social media now to infiltrate these gatekeepers, because I can honestly tell you they're there now, but 2 weeks, 3 weeks from now, they won't be there.
Right.
You know, you ask any college athlete how often, especially 2 years out, 3 years out, 4 years out, you ask them, how often do you communicate with the life skills person at your university? 2 years out, 3 years out, 4 years out. They'll tell you I never even talked to the person.
Right.
Or they'll say the person's gone now.
Yeah.
So how is it called life skills if you're not helping me for the rest of my life?
Yeah.
Well, again, I think that's the unfortunate thing about and the fault of the university system, that in some ways they can help, in other ways they can't. I mean, the students are there for a very short period of time, and they have structures that are, I think, more built for the non-athlete, and they kind of try and fit. I don't know how you feel about this, Mark, but they try and fit their athletes into a system like life skills or career development, or call it what you will, for non-athletes.
Right.
And it falls short because it isn't addressing the types of things that you're addressing, certainly the types of things that we talk about, where an athlete's mentality, their identity, who they are, how they process things is very different. One of the things that Ava and I work on constantly and are always talking about is kind of that repurposing athletic intelligence. There are so many characteristics that are, and you mentioned this, that are built into an athlete as they progress along their career. They're given a sandbox to play in, where tools that many of us would love to have are developed in a way that could be so meaningful. And nobody in the university system, again, no fault, know how to take those skills and show them that you have them as athlete. If you have them as an athlete, you can have them any place else in the world.
Sure.
So, I feel like it's somewhat the fault of the universities, somewhat a fault of the systems, and just maybe not understanding really what the athletic identity of somebody is.
Yeah, and what they need and how to support them.
Yeah.
Yeah, after you finish, you graduate, like you were saying, and I love that you said that about the services that they offer the non-athlete and how they bunch them together. And they really bunch them together at the end, because when you're an athlete and you get that alumni letter saying, hey, give us some money,
yeah,
and you're looking at it thinking, I need a job.
Right.
Okay. I need a job. And you keep every other week,
right.
I'm getting these things in the mail
sure,
saying, hey, give us some money. Right. Just one thing that I say that I think is doable. Some things are far-fetched. You can say, okay, come on, Mark, that's a little bit out there. But I just think it's doable for you to have a department in your athletic department, a subunit of that just calls every athlete that graduates, that didn't graduate, and say, how are you doing?
Right. Yeah.
That's it. How are you doing? And I mean, give me the Rolodex. I'll call them.
Sure.
How are you doing? That's all I want to know. How are
right.
you doing today? Well, what do you mean? Now, I'm saying, if, let's say, for example, you have 45, 50 athletes graduate. Let's say you have 100, right? You've got 100 athletes that graduate. We could divide those up by the three of us and make one call a day.
Yep.
Right.
Right? Make one call a day. How you doing? What is it that the university can do for you at this point? We never get that.
Yeah.
Now, for me, I received, from my alma mater, from the basketball program, we used to receive gifts every year. You get a gift. And I think, wow, that's nice. That's great. But are you calling anybody asking how they're doing?
Yeah.
If they're struggling with this, transition. And I think that because athletic identity has five different phases, it's hard for people to know where to start with one individual because they don't know what phase of athletic identity that they're currently experiencing.
Sure.
Can you quickly define those 5 phases for us?
Oh, yeah. So you have the initial phase, where you just start off, in sports where everybody starts off. You have the invincible phase where you believe that you're better than anybody else and you can smack women around and, fraud people and do all that other stuff. You have the in-between phase where you believe that, you're in between whether or not I should really take this seriously or really focus on my academics. Then you have your invisible phase where it's almost as if whether you're hurt or you're red shirting or gray shirting, where no one else knows your name at this point except for your parents. Nobody even cares about you.
Yeah.
And then you have the independent stage. And the independent stage are people like a Magic Johnson, when they get to that goal. Or even, I would even say this, athletic identity is a multitude of phases, and you can experience all of them at once, or you can experience them, one at a time. If you look at one of my favorite players, Kobe Bryant, or Tiger Woods, Tiger was on top of the game, on top of his world, where he was considered to be in the independent phase. Then all of a sudden, bang, all these things came out about Tiger, which showed that he was also living in the invincible world where I can do whatever the hell I want to do.
Yeah.
So when you're working with an athlete, or when I'm working with an athlete, I can tell, okay, you're in that invincible phase where you don't think that your boo-boo doesn't stink.
Yeah.
So we need to work either to the right or to the left to get you to become more in the independent stage, to understand how you as an athlete can transform that athletic identity to become who you really need to be. And it's not difficult when you know where that person is currently situated.
Yeah. So I want to follow up on that by quoting you again. Reading through some of your material, you said that the premature death of an athlete's destiny stems from a lack of athletic identity, which can sound very fatalistic. But is there a point of no return? Is there a point at which you've just gotten this far and there really isn't much we can do now?
Whew. Yes and no. I got to say yes and no, only because some athletes tend to go into the area of substance abuse because of this. What I say is personal player development. It's a bridge between what we do from a personal development standpoint and what people do from a clinical standpoint.
Yeah.
And so once you cross that bridge and you're stepped into that clinical area, then there is possibly a point of no return.
Yeah.
You hear so many stories of, folks that are in sports and then now they're addicted to drugs, addicted to alcohol, and they're not coming back.
Sure.
They're not coming back. And no matter what we do, especially from my standpoint, if I know that there's an athlete where there's a heavy presence of substance abuse involved, I can't touch them.
Yeah.
I can't touch them. I refer them to someone who's in a clinical field because they're at the point of no return. And that's a fight that I don't want to, there's someone else to do that job.
Absolutely.
And for me, it's when we're looking at now this push in terms of mental health, and I get it, I understand it. But if we look at a lot of the athletes that come out and say, well, I've got these issues with mental health, if we look at their history, if we look at their history and we go back to their high school freshman year, fine, perfectly fine. Sophomore year, junior year, senior year. You look at it, you talk to them, oh, yeah, everything was great. Everything was great. And then you get to college, everything's great. Once you get to the professional level and all this other stuff happens and you start making this money, then, you see a lot of issues. But we've neglected the personal development for many years.
Right.
So, it becomes, I call it a mental well-being issue, not more of a mental health issue.
Yeah. And that's a good reminder. We are not mental health professionals, but Winnie and I do often talk about wanting to do an entire show on mental health, mental well-being in sports. It's a good reminder for us to circle back and make sure that happens at some point.
Definitely.
Very soon.
Definitely. Mark, I have to tell you, Dr. Mark, because that's how you're affectionately known.
Oh, just call me Mark. The people,
Mark,
the kids always say Dr. Mark, Dr. Mark, Dr. Mark.
Listen, we have to, we're at the end of an amazingly important and interesting and fantastic show with you. We appreciate so much you joining us. You've given our audience a lot to consider and think about, and I think that we will want to have you on again at some point because I know we didn't even touch the surface of where we wanted to with you, as always happens. Thank you so much for joining us. Can you just quickly tell people where to find you in case they've watched the show and they're interested in connecting their athletes in their life to you?
Oh, just Twitter at Dr. Mark PPD, which is personal player development. That's it.
All right.
Wonderful.
Thank you so much for joining us today. We will be back. Actually, we have an odd schedule again. We've had a couple of things to change around in a couple of weeks, not a couple of weeks' time, but about 2.5 weeks' time. Right. We will keep you up to date on the schedule. Thank you so much for joining us today. You can find us at thedistilleryinc.com, and please subscribe to our channels on YouTube, iHeartRadio, iTunes, CastBox, Stitcher, all of the great podcast platforms. We'll look forward to seeing you soon. Thank you so much. Take care.
Thank you.
In the future, talk radio will actually educate, inspire, and make you think. The future is now. Topics and music that affect your life from Universal Broadcast.